Once upon a time, there was a man who did nothing but gamble. And for that reason, people never called him anything but Gambling Hansel. Der Hansel in German. And as he never ceased to gamble, he played away his house and all that he had. This old German folk tale from the Brothers Grimm that heeds the hazards of gambling told part of the story, but as often happens, the whole story has not been told. We do know that Hansel, when thrown back down to earth, broke into 1,000 pieces, and that those pieces had turned into compulsive gamblers. But what we did not hear from the story was that one of those pieces was a seed that was planted. This planted seed, with very little water but lots of sunshine, grew to become a renewed Hansel, infused with great mathematical knowledge. Here at Alpine Institute, as we often do, we tell the tale in full. Well, partially full, because Hansel had so many encounters. 999 to be exact. We begin today by quickly summarizing the story you may have heard as a child, and then pick up the story after Gambling Hansel was thrown down from the heavens. If you did not have the opportunity to hear this story when you were a kid, go to the link below to broaden your knowledge within the world of the Brothers Grimm. Okay, the story begins with Gambling Hansel's addiction to gambling. He loses everything and is waiting for the creditors to claim his stuff. While he was waiting, he had some heavenly visitors ask to stay the night. He agrees to let them stay, but tells them there is no food to eat. He is given by the visitors 3 groschen to buy some bread. Groschen are silver coins. Of course, he can't resist gambling it away. When he sees the heavenly visitors, he claims he lost the money and acts like he's trying to find it in the gutter. He gets 3 more coins from the visitors, and they eat bread and drink wine. The next morning, Gambling Hansel gets 3 wishes from the visitors. They think he will wish for heaven, but instead, he chooses a deck of cards that will never lose, dice that are unbeatable, and a fruit tree that acts as a prison for those who climb it. With his wishes, he wins half the world, in which case heaven sends the Grim Reaper to stop him. Gambling Hansel, aware that death is after him, tricks death to climb the tree that traps him. Without an active Grim Reaper, no one was dying, which upset the balance of the world. Finally, heaven commands Gambling Hansel to let death out of the tree. He does, and then accepts death. He tries to be led into the heavens, but is denied. He finally finds himself in the underworld. But with his lucky deck of cards, he is able to win some freedom from the underworld. Given this freedom, he finds a way to hammer the floor of the heavens. He hammered so much that the heavens began to crack. With the fear of the heavens crumbling, they reluctantly let him in. As Gambling Hansel was now roaming the heavens, he began to wreak havoc there, spreading his addiction to gambling. Knowing that heaven could not sustain the destruction caused by Hansel's ill habit, he was thrown down to earth where he shattered into 1,000 pieces. But many of you don't know that is not where the story ends. There was a penance to be paid by Gambling Hansel. It turns out that one of those pieces was a seed that planted into the earth, and with little water and much sun, the seed turned into the man that broke into 1,000 pieces. It was Gambling Hansel himself. But this Hansel was enlightened with all the mathematical probabilities of all the games of chance. The new Hansel had broken the gambling stranglehold, that addiction that left his old life in ruins. With this infusion of great mathematical knowledge, he knew the odds of poker, roulette, blackjack, craps, and any other gambling game you could think of. The lure and excitement of these games of chance was gone because the superstition and mystery was replaced by knowledge, in particular the mathematics of probability. With this great knowledge, he was given a great responsibility. This responsibility was given to him in the form of a mission. His given mission was to make up for the pain his gambling had caused. He was to one by one eliminate the strong compulsion to gamble within the 999 vagabonds whose bare feet were pierced by the broken pieces made by the gambler Hansel. These piercing pieces from Gambling Hansel exacerbated an already ugly habit within the vagabonds. And there was a fear that if nothing was done, it would certainly and greatly affect them and their posterity. Now, I'd love to tell you all 999 stories, but time limits me to just one today. We begin the second part of the story by the renaming of Hansel. He was glad to shake the name of Gambling Hansel and replace that name with Helpful Hansel, Hilfreich Hansel in German. Knowing he could only conquer the addiction to gambling with a solid education, he thought of his mind as a traveling university, in which he called the Alpine Institute. He knew he would have to develop a strong foundation of logic and probability within the folks he met, in particular the infected vagabonds. Putting one foot in front of the other, he set forth to find the first vagabond in which he would heal. The plan was to convert poor and addicted gamblers into well-respected mathematicians all around the world. His first student he stumbled upon in Lower Bavaria. In his travels, he thought he would first meet a card player because cards were ever so popular in gambling milieus. But to his surprise, his first encounter was a man addicted to the game of craps. Now, if you don't know the game of craps, it's a game with dice where there are multiple bets on the sum of the dice on each and every roll. The game can get pretty detailed, but in an oversimplification of the game, the gambler can bet on different numbers, and if the number appears, the gamblers win a preset amount of money. This seemed like sure money to the gambler named Snake Eyes Stefan. Snake Eyes is the slang given to rolling a 2, one on each die in a crap game. When the 2 ones look up at you from the crap table, it looks like the eyes from a snake. Now, Snake Eyes Stefan, infected by the gambling bug, or in reality, the piece embedded in his infected foot, thought rolling a sum of 2 over a short period of time was a lock, a sure thing. The payout in a crap game for rolling a 2 is 30 to 1. You bet 1 unit of money for a roll of the dice, and if 2 shows up, you get 30 units of the same money. Every once in a while, Stefan would win his bet, and it would only reinforce his gambling behavior, even though the losses far outweighed the wins. On any given day, he still held firm to the belief that before he could roll the dice 30 times, he would certainly roll snake eyes at least once. which would mean a positive gain in cash, not negative. This is the gambler's mind. Yes, this is the gambler's mind until educated by Alpine Institute. After much travel, Helpful Hansel came upon a crap game in a small town. As he approached this game, he saw a man leaving the game a little distraught. This distraught individual was Snake Eyes Stefan. Hansel caught up with Stefan and asked him why he was so upset. Stefan's response was, "I lost my grocery money in that crap game." Hansel said, "Why would you chance losing your food money?" In which case, Stefan responded, "I didn't think I was chancing anything." Hansel remembered thinking this way himself, that feeling you could never lose. Helpful Hansel, with a consoling voice, said to Stefan, "If I pay for your groceries, will you listen to me for a few hours?" Stefan quickly replied, "Of course." Hansel bought Stefan's groceries, and they ventured to a spot in the middle of a forest. Hansel said, "We will call this spot in the forest Alpine Institute, and I implore you to become an esteemed learner and thinker of our institute. Here you will have a creative force within your mind, an invisible university with no bounds." He told Stefan he was meant to do great things, and he spoke with such strength and expressed so much confidence in this destitute gambler that the gambler, for the first time in his life, felt that anything was possible. Stefan was so overcome by the aura of Hansel that he could not say no. Hansel said, "Tomorrow morning, do not go to the crap table, but walk to the spot in the forest, the spot we call Alpine Institute." The next day, Stefan showed up at that very spot. Hansel was ready to keep the momentum going. Stefan's mind was open to listen, and Hansel was ready to deliver. When Stefan showed up, he saw a hat on a tree stump with Hansel standing next to it. Before Hansel would teach Stefan all the rules of probability and statistics, he knew he must first obliterate the idea and love for the game of craps, and in particular the idea of snake eyes. The lesson began when Hansel poured out of a top hat 36 wood chips shaved in identical shapes. The shapes were of different colors and had numbers written on them. One chip was dark red with a 2 painted on it. 2 chips were dark green and had a 3 on them. 3 chips were orange and had 4s on them. 4 chips were dark purple and had 5s on them. 5 chips were dark blue, dunkelblau, colored and had 6s on them. 6 chips were yellow and had 7s on them. 5 chips were light blue and had 8s on them. 4 chips were light purple and had 9s on them. 3 chips were pink and had 10s on them. 2 chips were light green with 11s painted on them. The last chip was light red with a 12 painted on it. Hansel, with a soft voice, said, "Stefan, if I put the chips back into the hat and stirred them up, which color would you bet on if you got to pick once out of the hat?" Stefan quickly responded, "Yellow. I would bet on yellow because there are more yellows compared to the other colors." "Makes sense," said Hansel. "But I'm curious why you didn't choose dark red." Stefan said, "I would not choose dark red because, like the light red, there's only one chip." After some short thought, Stefan was convinced that a bet on one chip, the dark red chip, was a stupid bet, a Dummkopf bet. Mathematically, he expressed that if you bet on the dark red, you only have a 1 out of 36 chance of winning. Or put another way, 35 ways of losing. After this confident statement, Hansel quickly tied the idea of the colored chip to the mathematics of the dice in the crap game. He quickly pointed out that rolling a 2 or snake eyes is the same as choosing a dark red chip from the hat. There's only one way to roll a 2. One way out of 36 possibilities. Stefan also surmised that each roll was independent of the other. He came to realize if a certain number hadn't been rolled, there wasn't a greater likelihood that that particular number would show up. In other words, that number wasn't due to show up. The possibilities were set before the roll took place. He realized he had been betting snake eyes over and over at 30-1, when in reality, the payoff should have been 36-1. Either way, snake eyes was a very dumb bet. Given his newfound knowledge, he insisted on running through the probabilities given on a roll of the dice. There is only one way to roll a 2. As for rolling a 3, there are 2 ways. To roll a 4, there are 3 ways. And for a 5, there are 4 ways. Rolling a 6, well, to roll a 6, there are 5 ways. Now 7 is the top of the mountain on a normal curve. There are 6 ways to roll a 7. The 7 is more likely to come up than any other number. To roll an 8, there are 5 ways. To roll a 9, there are 4 ways. To roll a 10, there are 3 ways. And to roll an 11, there are 2 ways. And finally, to roll boxcars, which is the slang for 12, there is, like snake eyes, only one way. Total, there are 36 ways to roll any possible number. Essentially, this is our probability space. So the probability of rolling any one number is X out of 36. Stefan was glowing due to the way his mind was expanding. Each day of lessons and lecture, he grew more confident in his mathematical abilities. To be sure, Stefan was cured of his addiction to gambling. Hansel had some additional medicine. He showed Stefan a vision of what the future would look like if he continued to gamble. In a cloud in the sky, Stefan saw an image of his posterity, approximately 11 generations into the future. In this vision, the man, part of his bloodline, was rolling dice in a game of craps while betting a fistful of money. He could see the glazed addiction in his eyes, and he speculated a stunted mind behind those eyes. A mind without mathematics. The vision of the man from another time ended with no hope of success, no enlightenment, and no grand feeling of a mountain of knowledge. Helpful Hansel told Stefan that the future would depend upon Stefan's decision today. The man of the future would grow mathematically as long as Stefan held to the principles of mathematics and logic. As long as Stefan continued to grow. And he did. He grew and he grew. He grew until one day Hansel knew his student was ready. Hansel knew Stefan's foundation in logic and mathematics was so strong that he could use that foundation of knowledge to build ideas in medicine, astronomy, engineering, and physics. he would solve the problems of his century to build a better society. But also, he would feel the responsibility to pass on to others the foundation of mathematics that he had learned from the mysterious man who called himself Helpful Hansel. Hansel, before he left, would begin that day an Alpine Institute tradition. On Hansel's last day, he told Stefan to present a lecture, the most brilliant lecture he could think of, and Stefan was to present it to the teacher he had so dutifully listened to and interacted with. After Stefan's delivering of a spectacular lecture on set theory, Hansel, proud as could be, reached down, pulled out a piece of the shattered Hansel from his student's foot as a symbol of graduation, shook his hand, and proceeded to march north. He marched north knowing that there were 998 vagabonds in which he must meet to change their lives forever. Now, it's been debated for years, but some historians believe Stefan was the founder of the university systems throughout Europe. We at Alpine Institute do not know the truth one way or the other, but we do know that Stefan went on to become a very influential mathematician of his time. And as for Helpful Hansel, he had a very important journey to complete that would take centuries to accomplish. Like Alpine Institute, Alien Institute is also dedicated to creating the doers and thinkers who live in our mysterious universe. And here, as members of Alien Institute, it is our passion and our venture to make sense of that very same universe in which we live.